Once you complete coursework, you no longer have the structure created by your classes with clear tasks and deadlines. The weight of completion shifts you, and you become the driver. Additionally, since one goal of this process is to help you become an independent scholar, you may find faculty reluctant to tell you precisely what to do, and they may look to you to tell them where you want to go and what you need from them to get there. As you will hear from faculty, the key is both embracing the ambiguity and creating your own structure.
When you're finished with your coursework, there is a lot of uncertainty. You no longer have to be someplace from 9 to noon on Monday. You no longer have a paper due on May 2nd to work for. Things just become more ambiguous. What I recommend is create a schedule and a structure for yourself. Work with your advisor and come up with a timeline. When do you want this paper done? When do you want to have this conference paper written? And it's going to be a bit different for everyone. I think begin with the end in mind. When you leave here, what do you want on your resume or vita? What do you want to be able to tell your future employer, whether in a business, in academia, in a nonprofit? And then if you begin with the end in mind, it's very easy then to write down the steps to get there. When people waffle or get lost, I think it's because they've lost sight of the end game. But if everyone here is bright, they're motivated, keep the end game in mind, work with your peers and your advisor on coming up with a path to reach that end game and stay on target.
I think that this is probably one of the hardest transitions that most students have in their academic careers is when coursework ends, because coursework is so familiar and so structured for many of our students. They've gone through years and years of academic training, and that structure becomes very familiar, very easy, and something that they're comfortable with. When they lose that structure, oftentimes students feel very lost. And the first thing, again, I think is important to realize is this is very common, that everybody goes through this. It's, in some ways, I liken it to the feeling of driving off a cliff. You've been very structured, you have your route you're going, and then all of a sudden you look down and there's no road there anymore. And so I liken it to the metaphor of you have to create your road then. You have to create your path, and you have to figure out what those structures are that you need to continue on your journey and make progress.
It's easy to get through coursework. I mean, it's what people have been doing for a long time. You show up for a course, you do exactly what the syllabus says, you get good grades, and then you move on to the next one. It's when you get to, after that, to the exams phase, the dissertation phase, that's where we see a lot of students slow down and struggle sometimes. And at that point, it really is about the ability to be self-directed, the ability to be disciplined, the ability to manage your time. I think those parts of the process are really valuable because they help the student gain the kinds of skills that they would need in the profession, whether as a faculty member or in some other way, that most of us successful professionals are disciplined and they're managers of their own time and they're self-starters. Those are all the things that have to happen at the exam stage and at the dissertation stage. You're not accountable to somebody else anymore, you're accountable to yourself. So I tell my students, you have to treat this like a job. It is your job. And whether it's a full-time job, whether this is something you do 8 hours a day or whether you're doing other things and this is a part-time job, it is a job. You've got to dedicate time to it. You've got to jealously protect that time. You've got to tell friends and even family members, no, I'm studying right now, I'm reading, I'm writing, and block out that time. Make a commitment to yourself, block it out on your calendar, and treat it with the seriousness with which it deserves.
There's phase 1, which is the structured coursework. You're on campus every week. And there's phase 2, which is not structured, and you're just kind of working on your own on a proposal or a dissertation. And in fact, my colleague David Drew co-wrote a book with Paul Gray on what they didn't teach you in graduate school. And this is one of the important things they don't often teach you is how to survive phase 2. And David Drew recommends that students stay in touch with their academic advisor, make weekly meetings, even if they have no new activity to discuss, just the accountability of meeting with their advisor keeps them engaged.
People say they don't want structure, but people want structure. It's much easier to have a menu and a timeline for what's expected of you, even if the content of the course can be difficult. I find the process of writing a dissertation and developing the skills that lead you into the profession to be the much more difficult part. As you say, it's murky. There's not a clear path.
I do think that one of the points that often is hardest for students is when they come to the dissertation stage. I mean, classes, you have clear expectations, you know what you have to do. Dissertation, the student is expected to come up with an original research topic. Wow, that they're going to spend sometimes 2 to 4 years working on.
Once you ABD, you really sort of on your own. You know, you don't have that structure coming to campus with your classmates and with your professor. And so you pretty much have to be disciplined yourself. And it's also doubly difficult if you're working, because writing a dissertation is a very solitary kind of situation, But one of the nice things is now the Writing Center has the boot camp, because my students who participate in that, they rave over that. That makes a huge difference. And also they bond with other students who are also ABD and writing their dissertation. So they sort of keep up with one another, like how far have you gotten and these kind of things.
I tell my PhD students that the hardest part is after your coursework is done, because then the focus shifts from being in a very structured environment to this less structured situation where it takes more initiative on both the advisor's side and on the student's side to make progress towards completing the degree program, and that is a challenge, and it's challenging for PhDs in evaluation specifically because after they're done with their masters, a lot more job opportunities pop up, and so we have directors of evaluation at the Kaiser Community Foundation, at multiple organizations that are currently being filled by our current PhD students who are not done yet but are on their way to being done. And what I find to be a really successful strategy that they implement, the ones that do finish, is that they do meet with the advisor. They have a set of dates and deadlines that are negotiated and in which the advisor will check in on them and see how are you doing on this. Do you need to schedule a meeting? Do we need certain updates to help with the progress? So there has to be a proactive element on both the advisor and on the student side to help ensure progress.
A lot of students will focus on coursework. This is my goal, then qualifying them. Then after qualifying them, they suddenly say, what do? I don't have a research topic. What is about the proposal? So one first thing I always advise the student, if they come approach me earlier in the like when they're freshman year, when we have orientations for PhD students, I really always say, start to find faculties to talk about research and understand your areas and develop your research ideas early. You should think about your proposal very early in your PhD program. And then you should take those opportunities to develop your research ideas in your all doctoral level courses. We offer 3 doctoral level courses, which I always suggest students say, if you have an area you want to explore that can potentially be proposal, then you can using that in doing research project within the course. Then you have much better, you're much better when you finish qualifying them. You have something to start with. That's the first thing. So do not start after finishing coursework about your research. That's one advice. And secondly, Just Nature, our program have done, we provide, then after you finish almost all doctoral students finish all the coursework, they can start to do qualifying them, then prepare for qualifying them, then there's a guided independent study for doctoral students. Usually by this time is you pick your advisor, then you start work with the advisor for the idea development. I think that's a very important piece. And usually by this time, you just, sign the guided study, meet with your advisor. So I have some students for proposal development, I meet with them every week, some students every other week. And it's there to talk about, topic areas they're interested in, what could be a good research potential. And in those process, usually the student would come in with already solid ideas, but they say those are broader areas. Then we narrow down the areas that could be a research problem, then they will go out, do a lot of literature review. So really that guided study is literature review and identify problems, framing the problems. And usually, after semester, some students will have good ideas emerge, then they can get into their proposal.